Hey y'all, welcome back. Tuesday, June 17th was day 25 of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs. And yeah, we've officially hit the heat check. The prosecution's almost done laying out their case, and things in court are getting messier by the minute. But before we get into it, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel and keeps you looped in on everything coming out of this wild case. All right, let's talk about what went down. Day 25 kicked off with Judge Subramanian coming in hot. He wasn't just frustrated, he was straight up pissed. An article had leaked over the weekend, spilling info from a sealed hearing that happened last Friday. And the judge, he was not having it. Well, someone is lying. That's what he told the courtroom after both the defense and prosecution said they didn't know how the leak happened. Defense lawyer Mark Agnifilo said he only saw the article when the government sent it over. But Judge Subramanian wasn't buying excuses. He basically said, if this happens again, I'll start seizing phones and dragging folks in to testify under oath. He even reminded them that criminal contempt and sanctions are on the table. The whole courtroom got real quiet after that. Next up was Brendan Paul, the man prosecutors previously labeled Diddy's drug mule. He took the stand, invoked his Fifth Amendment right immediately, and said nothing further. The prosecution quickly moved to secure an immunity order, and the judge approved it on the spot. That move now allows them to bring Paul back to testify without fear of self-incrimination. After that, Special Agent Delicia Penland was back, and she came with paper trails and digital breadcrumbs. She walked the jury through hotel stays, flights, and all kinds of payments tied to Combs, Cassie, and other folks involved. Here's some of what she broke down. Jules Theodore, listed as an escort, had travel paid for by Bad Boy Entertainment. Clayton Howard, aka Dave, stayed at the Four Seasons charged to Diddy's Amex. $500 charge for messed up drapes. And a wild $46,786 penthouse damage fee at the Intercontinental Times Square, all paid using Diddy's American Express and settled through Signature Bank. Then the courtroom shifted to something heavier, a full timeline of a 2016 altercation between Combs and Cassie at the Intercontinental. Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson walked the jury through texts where Cassie told Diddy, "You are sick to think it's okay to do what you have done. Please stay far away from me." His replies, pure panic. "Call me. Help, I'm about to be arrested. If you don't pick up, you'll never hear my voice again." Cassie also hit up D-Rock, who told her to warn Diddy to get out before the cops arrived. Then they showed the jury a photo of Cassie with a swollen lip taken in the car right after she left the hotel. It was emotional, tense, and powerful. The jury finally got to watch actual footage from the so-called freak-off parties, not just screenshots or summaries. The tapes were about 11 to 12 minutes long, but the jury only saw 30-second clips of each. Even with those short clips, the reactions said it all. One juror covered her eyes. Another winced. Somebody else chuckled. Agent Penland confirmed the tapes were pulled from a device tied to Cassie, under a profile named Frank Black. All 5 videos shown that day were recovered directly from her phone, locking down chain of custody. After that, the defense came out swinging. Attorney Garagas read out a bunch of explicit messages Cassie had sent to Diddy, some romantic, some sexual, all meant to show she was willing. Some examples. "I'm always ready to freak off. I brought the best sexy outfits for later. I wish we could have freaked off before you left. I love you so much, you consume my life." She even pulled up a message where Cassie says she can't wait to have a baby with him and wishes him a happy Father's Day. The point is, to show that this wasn't abuse, it was mutual. Messy, maybe, but not criminal. Garagis challenged Penland on various points, including the lack of 911 calls related to the "cops are here" message, seeking to highlight gaps in the prosecution's narrative. In a brief redirect, the prosecution returned to the Riverhead Hotel, confirming Combs, Cassie, and Clayton Howard were present. Then they presented a photo of wounds above an eye, along with the text from Cassie to Combs stating, "So you can remember." The session concluded shortly thereafter, leaving the jury with that. The prosecution is coming hard with receipts, timelines, texts, money trails, freak-off videos, and women telling the same story. Diddy ran a controlled setup. Corporate cards, paid staff, cross-state travel, it's giving RICO. Meanwhile, the defense is flipping the script. They say this wasn't trafficking, it was toxic love. They're showing sweet texts, money gives, and saying Cassie was choosing to stay. They're poking holes, calling it messy, not criminal. Bottom line, prosecution's building a case around control and pattern. Defense is banking on doubt and free will.
So that was day 25, y'all. Now on to day 26. First off, the judge issued a new directive. The prosecution must prep a laptop that includes only the admitted electronic evidence. No extras, no visual aids, just what's officially in. That laptop must be handed over to the defense by Monday, June 23, 2025. Before closing arguments begin, both parties need to confirm that the laptop includes only those exhibits that are legally permitted. As for the physical evidence, the government is under the same deadline. They need to compile every single piece that was admitted into evidence, notify the defense exactly what's in that batch, and clarify which items will go into the jury room. Contraband, like drugs or weapons, won't be sent in. If the jury wants to see it, they'll have to view it in the courtroom. There's also a joint task. Both sides must create a comprehensive exhibit list, a clear, easy-to-understand inventory of every item that was admitted. This is meant to support the jury once deliberations start. Next, if the jury asks to review any trial transcripts, both sides have to quickly agree on what parts can legally be shared, especially in cases involving privacy or sensitive information. They've been advised to prioritize witnesses most likely to be requested and be ready to respond fast. Bottom line, the judge wants this all clean, legal, and easy to navigate for the jury. Now, on to the prosecution's response to the defense's proposed jury instructions. The defense made some asks, and the government is pushing back. First up, immunized witnesses. The defense claims they may lie to protect themselves, but prosecutors say that's misleading. Immunity only stands if they testify truthfully. Then, there's the issue of investigative techniques. The defense wants jurors to consider what the government didn't do. The prosecution says that's irrelevant. The focus should be on what's actually in evidence, not what's missing. On voluntary intoxication, the defense is hinting that Diddy may not have had criminal intent due to being under the influence. The government fired back, saying there's no proof he was intoxicated in any way that matters for this case. Plus, they say the proposed instruction is misleading. Regarding large amounts of cash, the defense argues it's not a crime. Prosecutors agree, but add that depending on context, it could still imply something shady. The last big one is about RICO. Defense argues that prosecutors have to prove Diddy was still in the conspiracy after September 2019. The government says, nope. Once you're in, it's up to you to prove you got out. Silence or stepping back isn't enough. You'd need to alert your co-conspirators or take a clear step to cut ties. Otherwise, you're still in it. Now let's get to the action. Before the jury returned, the prosecutor asked, "Your Honor, may I place a binder of documents on the witness stand?" The judge allowed it. All rise. The jury entered. "The government may call its next witness," said the judge. Prosecutor stood up and began introducing exhibits, all sealed except one. Then came Brendan Paul. Brendan Paul was shown a photograph of a man in a tuxedo and confirmed that it was Sean Combs. He testified that he worked for Combs until his arrest at a Florida airport, where cocaine was found in his personal assistant bag. When asked why it was there, Paul said he had been sweeping Mr. Combs' room. Paul testified that he would describe what drugs he brought to Combs, what drugs he was given, and the amount of money involved. According to him, he was recruited by someone named El Maroon through Revolt. Maroon told him, "Get in and get out. If I have a girlfriend, break up with her. You're never going to see your family." Paul said Maroon made clear the job would be demanding. He interviewed in late October 2022 at 200 Mapleton Drive. Upon arrival, his ID was scanned and he signed a non-disclosure agreement. Frankie Santella and Christina Kareem, referred to as KK, were present. Paul said he was hired and initially tasked with packing marijuana joints in the garage. He said his first meeting with Combs occurred when KK invited him to a listening party and asked him to take notes. KK was described as the chief of staff who also helped out with the family and used Combs' phone. Paul testified that Combs initially had 5 assistants, which later reduced to 4, then 2. Paul and other assistants divided responsibilities, including travel, workouts, and music-related needs. Given his college basketball background, Paul assisted with Combs' fitness routine. He testified his starting salary was $75,000, later raised to $100,000, paid bi-weekly through Combs' Ridgeprise. He identified others, Jonathan Perez, another assistant, and Frank Rodriguez, a butler who would stand next to Combs and provide items like water and chapstick. Paul said there were group chats involving KK and that Fahim, also known as Fa, was involved. Paul described working 80 to 100 hours per week across 4 to 6 days and said he was always on call. He traveled often, sometimes on Combs' private jet, though usually separately. He said stylists and photographers often traveled in advance. He recalled working without sleep during an album release in New York, staying awake for about 3 days, though he took naps. "I was young, so I was able to handle it." He stated that he lived in Airbnbs in Los Angeles and Miami, and that Christina Coram lived in an apartment 4 minutes from South Mapleton and also on Two Star Island. Paul confirmed he accompanied Combs to paid club appearances where Combs would request $150,000 and have items sold. To stay awake, Paul said he used prescription Adderall and sometimes cocaine. His job, he said, was to make sure Mr. Combs was always happy. He quoted Combs as saying, "I don't take no for an answer," and described being told to move like SEAL Team 6. Paul testified that he was fired for forgetting Combs' Lululemon fanny pack during a walk. Combs reportedly said, "I don't want to see your face anymore. Tell KK you are fired." Paul responded by purchasing a new fanny pack and staying low. He said he never complained to HR. That wasn't a thing. He said the HR forgot to pull his federal taxes for the first 8 months. Issues went directly to Combs. Paul confirmed that Combs used drugs, including ecstasy and cocaine. He identified a photo of his own hand holding ecstasy and 2C, pink cocaine, explaining that he took the photo to ask staff what to do after he found it. He was told to put it in Combs' bag. He admitted to buying marijuana for Combs from a supplier named Philip Pines and mentioned other dealers, One Top, Guido, Baby Girl, and someone he thought was spelled OEI. Paul was shown a chat with Baby Girl in which Jonathan Perez introduced them. When she asked if the drugs were for him or Puff, Paul said he replied, "Puff, but tell anyone it's for me. Puff is high profile, so we use aliases." Paul also confirmed that Combs used Cialis, which they kept in his nightstand. He explained that Love was the nickname he used for Combs, and that the red phone was personal while the yellow phone was business. He testified that Combs sent him a message asking for Xanax. He said drugs were paid for in cash, either from a Gucci bag or through security, usually Fahim. Flowers and tree were code for marijuana. In one text, Fahim told Paul he'd be paid once Duke came on shift. Paul said Combs once asked him to test his 2C. He agreed to do so, saying he wanted to prove loyalty. He described Wild King nights as events involving Combs, significant others, drugs, and sex. He confirmed that Jane participated, but said he wasn't aware of other girlfriends doing so. According to Paul, KK referred to them as Wild King nights. Paul testified that Christina Korm did not want him involved in these nights, though he was still responsible for cleaning up. Jurors were shown an iPhone note with the schedule from February 2023 that Paul said Korm created. The schedule included a line saying, "Be ready for Wild King nights," referring to Jane's birthday visit to Miami. Paul said that after the Cassie lawsuit, these events were moved from hotels to Combs' residences. He made reservations at Nobu and said one Wild King night was held at Jane's residence. He mentioned a shared document used by staff to track supplies. He stated that the property manager was responsible for laying out Astroglide in the bathroom and said he once took a photo to show the manager how to set it up properly. Paul claimed he used his own credit card for some supplies and was reimbursed by Combs' financial team. He also said he once provided $5,000 in cash for a Wild King night, which he received from security. Another assistant allegedly left cash in an envelope at a hotel front desk. When asked whether Combs contacted him about Wild King nights, he confirms he did, through voice notes or FaceTime. Jurors saw photos Paul sent Combs from a sex shop while Combs was with Jane. Paul said Combs never responded after he sent the images. Asked how he cleaned up afterward, Paul said he wore gloves for sanitary reasons. He described rooms left in disarray: towels, sheets, empty bottles of baby oil and liquor, and in one instance, white powder he believed was drug residue. The jury was shown a photo of a hotel room with furniture covered in sheets, which Paul said he sent to Combs' travel manager to warn of potential damage charges. He was shown a photo from the day of his arrest, March 25, 2024, involving a rented jacket and cocaine found in his bag. When asked if the cocaine was his or Combs', defense objections were sustained and overruled. Another photo showed a selfie taken on a private jet with Sean Combs, Christina Korm, and Paul on March 25, 2024, the day Paul was arrested at the Miami Opa-locka Executive Airport. Paul confirmed they were en route to the Bahamas with Combs' family. He testified the cocaine was for Combs' personal use and had been left in his bag by accident. He told law enforcement that everything in the bag was his. When asked why he didn't say otherwise, he responded, "Loyalty." He said the charges were dropped because he had a really good lawyer. After his arrest, he completed a diversion program and drug treatment. Cross-examination began with Mr. Steele noting Paul had played basketball at Syracuse and UNCC before his career ended. Steele asked if Paul's role was more than that of a drug mule. Paul responded absolutely, saying it was a minor part of his job. The defense asked if the hotel nights were personal. The judge sustained objections and asked for questions to be rephrased. Paul confirmed from his observation that they were Mr. Combs and Jane, relaxation, personal. When asked if he had seen Jane act hesitant, Paul replied, "I did not." Steele suggested that if Paul had seen non-consensual activity, he would not have continued working there. The judge sustained an objection. "You care about your reputation." "Yes." "You were arrested for 27 grams, barely personal use. It was a mistake, right?" "Yes." "The case was dismissed?" "Yes." "Did drugs make Mr. Combs more focused?" "He got extremely creative." Asked if he felt indebted to Combs, he said, "For the most part, no." There were no further questions. The prosecution requested a sidebar before redirect.
Following a brief sidebar granted by the judge, the prosecution resumed redirect examination of Brendan Paul. The prosecutor asked Paul whether he knew what was happening during the Wild King nights. Mr. Steele objected. The judge sustained the objection and instructed the prosecution to rephrase. The prosecution then asked, "Were you there?" Paul replied, "No." The prosecution followed up, "What did you think the $5,000 was for?" Mr. Steele objected. The judge sustained. The prosecution asked whether Paul gave Mr. Combs $5,000 in cash in another context. Paul answered no. The prosecution returned to a previous statement where Paul said he would not work for a criminal. They asked, "But you brought drugs for Mr. Combs?" Paul replied, "Yes. More than 5 times, but less than 10. The prosecution then asked, "How do you feel about Mr. Combs?" Paul responded, "It's complicated."
The prosecutor stated, "No further questions, Your Honor." The defense confirmed no recall for the witness. The judge said, "Thank you. You may go, Mr. Paul." Brendan Paul then exited the witness stand. The judge invited the government to call its next witness. Before doing so, the prosecution introduced new exhibits, a series of text message exchanges between Sean Combs and Christina Coram, KK. One message dated April 25, 2023, read, "Combs, I can't take it no more. Album not done." KK responded, "You can have release after the studio. We control our energy." Combs replied, "Whatever, get me Frank." The prosecution played an audio message from Combs, in which he said, "Have Jonathan do it." Ms. Coram replied in another message, "John will go to the hotel." The prosecution informed the court they had a bit more to present and then requested a break. The judge agreed. Before the break, a message involving someone named Veronica Bangs was briefly shown on the screen and then taken down. As court resumed, the prosecution began reading messages from Ms. Ventura, identified earlier as Cassie Ventura, addressed to Mr. Combs. In one message, Ventura stated, "You bashed my head in." Combs responded, "You're crazy. Stop talking. Flipping on me for what? We're taking a break." Ventura replied, "I don't want to be beaten down for standing up for or ever." Combs wrote, "I try to figure out how to get this nut out." The prosecution continued reading without a witness on the stand. Ventura said, "All I wanted was to have a good time. You took all of your anger out on me as per usual. You dragged me down the hall by my hair. This is not play fighting anymore. I was serious about Rita coming over." She added, "Boris had to tackle you, Puff. That's not love, that's possession. I have a bleeding cut." Combs replied, "I'm not going to let anyone on me when all I've done is try to be nice. You don't treat me like the king, you act like I'm a bitch." Ventura's next message said, "Talk to your people and they'll tell you, or they won't since all they do is success." At that point, defense attorney Mr. Johnson asked, "May I confer with Ms. Geragos?" The judge allowed it. Ms. Geragos then requested a break. The judge granted the break. With the jury out, Ms. Geragos said, "We want to read the next page." She cited a message from Ventura stating, "I love our freak-offs when we both want them." The judge noted that the messages were in evidence, but acknowledged that, for some reason, we are just reading these to the jury. The defense had not previously objected to the messages being read. Ms. Geragos raised concerns, stating this leaves a prejudicial impression with the jury. The judge asked for the basis of their objection. The defense responded that they didn't know the prosecution would read only their portion of the messages. When asked what they wanted to read, Ms. Geragos said, "Just the 4 messages." The judge responded, "I think it's fair for the defense to read the 4 messages." The prosecution added, "I didn't intend to be misleading. If your court is saying that these 4 messages should be read, I should be the one to read them." The judge agreed. A recess was called. When court resumed and the jury re-entered, the prosecution clarified, "Let me read again. I had read the wrong version." The prosecution read a message from Ms. Ventura to Mr. Combs. "You want to party and have a good time. I have to focus or I'll never become anything. You treat me like I'm a hooker for 10 years. I love our freak-offs when we both want them." The government then called its next witness, Joseph Sarasiello, an agent with Homeland Security investigations with over 18 years of experience. When asked how many records he had reviewed for the case, Sarasiello replied, "Thousands." The prosecution asked, "What is the only female's name in this chart?" Sarasiello answered, "Jane." At this point, the public screens were turned off. The prosecution asked, "What's the name of the hotel?" Sarasiello replied, "One Hotel South Beach." He identified a hotel charge from May 22nd to the 23rd, $3,350.90 for one night. He confirmed that Jane had taken a JetBlue flight from New York to Miami. Next, the prosecution played Instagram videos with loud music. Sarasiello confirmed that the metadata matched the timeline. They identified Jessica Ruiz as Mr. Combs' travel agent. He also testified that the cost for damages to a property listed under losses and damages were $6,000. When asked who flew on a specific flight, Circiello said Jane and Cabell. The flight route was from Miami to LA, then back to Miami. Another person, Carol, traveled from Atlanta. While the prosecution toggled between exhibits not shown to the public, they introduced a message from Jane recently made available. Circiello confirmed the existence of a hotel damage report from the London hotel, room 229, citing bodily fluids spread on the floor. Photos were attached. The names on the report included Jane, Reggie, Paul, Combs, and Carol. He reviewed messages and financial records involving Paul, Arthur, and Combs. One entry showed Arthur Fitness Limited with ATM cash deposits of $900 and $600. There were further hotel damage reports. Circiello confirmed that Fahim's cell phone had been seized. The judge instructed to take that one down. It had not been visible to the public. The court then called for a sidebar. During this time, another text from Jane appeared. In it, she wrote, "I'm crying. I'm so triggered by this, but it's too close to some nights I felt forced. Please stop drugging and using women for your fetish nights. It creates demons inside of us and real trauma to women who are only doing it to please you. Let the pain on the other women stop with me. Leave women alone who don't want to do those nights with you. Hire prostitutes and stop emotionally harming women that love you." In a second message, Jane wrote, "You want to have me suck some dick so you could jet off on an island with Gina or Young and have me do dirty in hotel room after hotel room." After the sidebar ended, the prosecution resumed. They asked, "Did Jonathan Perez send this to Fahim?" Circiello confirmed, yes. The exchange involved someone named Anton. The exhibits were sorted by date. The prosecution asked, "Who sends this message?" Circiello replied, "KK." In the message, Jonathan wrote to Fahim, "I don't know if you're holding $10,000. Fahim responded, "Trying to get some more now." The prosecution noted the message was dated June 20th, 2024, exactly 1 year ago from that day in court. The prosecutor then said, "Your Honor, I think it's a good stopping place since we're ending early for today." The judge addressed the jury. "You may leave. Don't read anything." As proceedings wrapped up, the judge turned to the parties and asked, "Ms. Comey, how many more on direct?" Ms. Comey replied, "To midday on Monday. I hope Ms. Geragos can finish cross by the end of the day on Monday." The judge responded, "Then Rule 29. Mr. Agnifilo added that they'd be on the shorter side and would inform the government over the weekend whether they intended to rest at the end of Monday. He said the defense might rest on Tuesday or Wednesday." The judge concluded, "I'll send the proposed charges today. You send edits Tuesday evening. We could do a charge conference on Wednesday and closing on Thursday." The judge said the courtroom would be available until 2:30 p.m. if needed and advised to submit a written application for extended use. With that, the day's proceedings concluded. So now I want to hear from y'all. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Y'all know how we do. Thanks for watching, and before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next update. I'll catch you in the next one.